Welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. Today we have the lovely Hannah, co-founder of Haboo.
Hi, nice to be here.
Nice to have you here, Hannah. Thank you for joining us. Haboo are improving the debt repayment experience to make it easier for people to stay on top of repayments. It's a really amazing, lofty mission, Hannah. Why don't we start actually with the story behind the name Haboo?
Yeah, so we get that a lot, obviously. Our mission from the beginning has been really around removing the taboo from
Right.
from debt. Debt is a subject that very few people like talking about. It's quite ugly, and so we really want to turn that on its head with Haboo. And so we've rather cleverly combined the Abu of taboo with habits of building healthy financial habits.
Very nice. I didn't actually know that.
There you go. Yeah.
That is very cool. And what made you focus on this debt repayment area, and like what sparked the idea behind it?
Yeah, so my co-founder and I, when we first started talking about this, we'd both identified in our own sort of personal circles, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, more and more people struggling with debt ultimately and struggling to repay it, finding themselves in way too much debt and being overwhelmed by that problem. And so I suppose we really started with that very macro topic of a realization of, wow, there's so many people now, employed people with good jobs even, who are falling into debt, and really the support and the infrastructure that's in place to help them doesn't exist, which having worked in fintech for my whole career, I just found crazy, because we've seen how much of an impact the latest innovations in fintech have had on things like wealth. And so we just thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity, and actually just a bit unfair that those same innovations haven't been applied to the debt market.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It is, like you said earlier, it is something that people don't often like to talk about, and that can actually, I guess, make it hard to solve the problem.
It definitely does. And it's also like a big challenge that we run into a lot is it's not only do people not want to talk about it, it's not a very sexy problem. Unfortunately, we're trying to, with our brand, we're trying to sort of change that a bit as much as we can. But it's also, it's well known that it's a really hard problem to solve. And we've taken those warnings in our stride, and we ultimately, we know that a lot of companies have failed to solve this problem, but we hope that with the sort of different approach that we're taking, that perhaps we've got a chance.
Yeah. What is that approach? How are you approaching this problem? How are you solving it?
So what we really want to do is build an experience for customers in debt. We think that's what is really missing from the status quo today. Typically customers in debt, or even just any customers with a loan or credit product, they'll often be left to their own devices in terms of how they repay that. It might be a direct debit, which is pretty historic payment method, not very flexible or experiential. It might be manual payments. We are talking to some lenders who we say, how do your customers pay you? And they genuinely say, check. Yes. Yes. That's where we're playing. And that's crazy. And it's not just the payment methods, it's the whole experience that sits around it that we're interested in. Why can't these customers have an experience like you might have for a savings product?
Right.
That's in your pocket, that makes it as easy as possible for you to save. Just apply those same methods and tactics to helping customers with their loan or debt repayment journeys. And so that's sort of the vision. That's probably quite broad. Where we're really starting is on that payments, on the payments piece. So both the payments technology and then the experience that sits around it. So it's a digital product. We are leaning into variable recurring payments, which is the latest and greatest method of making recurring payments. It allows much more flexibility and control for customers, which we think is really important. And then, of course, we plug those variable recurring payments into the wallets that are enabled by Griffin, which again offers the customers full control, full access to those wallets, so they can always take those funds back if they need them for whatever reason. And ultimately, at the end of the month, we hope we've helped the customer to make sure that money is set aside so that they can make their loan repayments.
That was very smart. And I love how you're bringing that that user experience that is so prevalent in the consumer market to an area that really needs it, and hopefully builds much better kind of financial habits for people.
Exactly, and I think that's really that's what we want to do. And we go back to the name, it's about building habits. There's no reason why, just because people are in debt, that you can't also be helping them to build those financial habits that will hopefully not only help them get out of debt, but then beyond their debt repayment journeys. That's really what we believe in. It's very optimistic, but that's really what we want to achieve.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. You mentioned Griffin is helping power the account side of this.
Yeah.
What made you choose Griffin? Yeah. And what's it been like working with Griffin so far?
It's been great. It's, obviously we have an ambitious product. Getting the account, this sort of wallet, save as you repay functionality into the product has been a huge, I suppose, dependency from very early on. I started chatting to Griffin when this was just an idea,
right.
Which is nice, so Griffin has really been a part of helping us actually shape how this would look. I can't even remember probably what I first pitched to one of your team. It's probably totally different to what we're doing now, but that's really a testament to how we've been on the journey together and actually been helped by Griffin to figure out what is feasible, what is possible, like what this product could actually look like if we partner. I think also just, a nice cultural alignment, a nice strategic alignment that, we're obviously really early stage, but Griffin is early stage as well. So you really understand as an organisation where we are right now, and that's really important to us. And that's really manifested as we've developed the partnership. It feels like a partnership, not a SaaS sales agreement.
A very hands-off approach. Yeah. That makes sense. That's very nice to hear. Very nice to hear. Stepping back into the industry again for a second, how does the solution that you're building help the lender side as well?
Yeah, so we are obviously very focused on more of the sort of tech for good and how can we help consumers, but we are also solving a massive problem for lenders. One side of it is that actually the problem we're solving for lenders is actually a non-negotiable. The regulator is really cracking down, in particular on the lending market, on making sure they're doing much, much more to deliver good customer outcomes and prove the fairness and flexibility of their solutions. And actually they've called out specifically in recent papers that the FCA have called out under Consumer Duty that flexible repayments are a way that lenders might demonstrate good customer outcomes. So that is, for lenders under a lot of pressure to demonstrate their compliance with these new regulations, that's we really are in a good position to help them deliver on those commitments. But beyond that, then more sort of commercially, I suppose, it's around helping reduce the operational burden of things like mystery payments. Existing, I mentioned some of the lenders we chat to are still dealing with checks, are still dealing with manual payers. So customers who have to remember to log on once a month to make a payment if they have the right amount of money in their account. So we're really removing the friction of that process for the customer, which then reduces the risk, but then also removing the friction for their operational teams. When a customer does default, let's say on a payment, that triggers someone needs to make a phone call, and that all has cost and effort attached to it. And the payment processes that exist at the moment, because they're so unflexible, it actually restricts the amount of help the lenders can then give the customers when they are asking for help. So that's really where it becomes very interesting. And ultimately, the bottom line is that if we can help lenders recover more, then that has a bottom line impact for them, which is a good thing. Yeah.
It's interesting how, you're focusing on the experience on the individual side actually has so many benefits for then both the lender side and the individual.
We think so. And it's interesting, when we started this journey, it was very consumer focused, but actually, happily, it's clearly a win-win. And I think as well, beyond that as well, one of the other sort of crazy things that we've realised in this is when we've looked at, okay, so why is it that there's no experience sitting around the repayment journey? And it's actually a big missed opportunity, because if you can build a really positive experience for your customers, or you can offer them a really positive experience in their repayment journey, then you're building that lifetime value. That customer's perhaps more likely to return to you for another loan, perhaps to consolidate other debts that they might have, or even looking even bigger picture into the sort of mortgage space or whatever it might be. So you're really creating a much stronger relationship with that customer, which is something that a lot of lenders neglect. They can be seen as very sort of short-term relationships, but we really see that as a bit mad, to be honest, and are trying to help lenders change that.
That was really cool. So obviously you're about to launch, which is very exciting.
Yes.
Would you like to share a little bit more about this amazing news that it's going to come up soon?
Yeah, sure. So we are, the product is just getting into some sort of beta testing now, which is amazing. We're getting some really nice feedback. And then in the coming weeks, we expect to be able to test sort of outside of sandbox environments and actually go live with our first lending client. I can't reveal too much about that at the moment, but yeah, we hope that within Q2 we should be really testing this and getting really learning, I suppose, most importantly, about how we can change customer behaviours in the repayment space with real loans.
That is so exciting. Yeah. That's very, very cool. Can't wait for that. And Hannah, you've been living and breathing this problem, and you're a fintech founder. It's not an easy journey. To say
for my sins.
We like to wrap up this series with a question of what one piece of advice would you give to a future fintech founder or an existing fintech founder?
I think for a future fintech founder, someone who's not started yet, I think it would be around just not underestimating how hard it is to build in the financial services space from scratch.
Right.
I think I've worked in financial services and fintech for my whole career, and I was totally naive to how hard it would be from a complexity perspective, from a regulatory perspective, and I think also from, it's easy to sit there and say, my bank should do this and my bank should do this because these technologies are so easy, but they're not so easy. And actually, especially in consumer finance, you're dealing with people's money. It's so sensitive. Yeah. And I feel very profoundly the risk of, if something goes wrong, the real people that are being both potentially negatively impacted, but also the potential that we can have to positively impact. And so with that comes obviously enormous responsibility. And I think that is, not to be underestimated when you're when you're starting out on this journey.
Very honest advice.
Yeah.
But still do it.
Give it a go.
Yeah. Awesome, Hannah. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Thanks so much. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.